Привіт, I'm Chuck Olenek. I'm a Ukrainian-American baptized with the name Yaroslav. That's the name I also use in the Society for Creative Anachronism, where I'm known as Yaroslav the Persistent, while most folks call me Yari. I normally do these videos wearing some sort of garb, but this is kind of a teaching thing, so I'm wearing the shirt that I traditionally started the school year in, since I used to be a history teacher. I know things about the dead. So, we all do. If you're in the SCA, you know stuff about the dead. And yesterday, I taught a class on how to share that knowledge. And it was about creating a YouTube channel, the how and the why. And I'm going to start this by starting it with a sentence that cannot possibly sound good. The cool thing about COVID was, actually it was the SCA reaction. People made videos. They made podcasts. They shared what was going on within their kingdoms. Kingdoms contributed dance videos. Members of the chivalry would do little clips about, I'm doing yard work, basic night stuff. I'm cooking a meal, basic night stuff. It was fun, it was funny, it kept people interested. There were people who put together in a lot of videos. I ended up watching, there must have been 20 videos on somebody lacing together lamellar. I wasn't bored with any of them, because I used to be a teacher and I watched people step out of their shells. Some people were complete extroverts, and they're always going to be. I'm one of those, all right? And I know, like, you needed to be told that. And there were others that you could tell were taking tentative steps to step out into a wider world. And that kept the SCA alive. And after things calmed down about COVID, there weren't as many videos. And that made me kind of sad. All right, so I wasn't going to do this as a video, but I mentioned it in the class that I taught yesterday on how to do a video or a YouTube channel. And I was told by the 3 people that were in class that I really ought to do the video. So here I am. Okay, why did I start my channel, and specifically why did I go to one of the categories, Tales of the Borderland, which is all about Slavic and Baltic and Eastern European research? Part of it was I wanted to reconnect with the research that I'd done over decades. And by doing the videos, I found the details were a lot fresher in my head. I learned new stuff along the way, and I got to document that. And then I realized I could share that information. So, when I used to teach, I'd teach 5 periods of world history every day. And the thing is, every single lecture came out different. I'd be in the garb, I'd have the notes, I'd have the PowerPoint, and every single lecture came out different because I would be speaking to the class, blah, 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 wisdom, knowledge, blah. And then the period would end, another period would come in, and as I'm doing the lecture, I'd remember an anecdote that would have been really important to include in the previous class. Well, here's an opportunity to actually record this stuff and make sure the details don't get lost along the way. So I'm going to try to help out with that. Now, as I was doing folk tales, as part of my Tales of the Borderland series, I was annoyed with the anachronisms. Boy, that sounds really funny considering the name of our organization. But there were things that did not fit, even though the tales themselves are centuries old, but they aren't getting recorded until maybe the early 19th century or late 18th century, and you would run into Eastern European measurements like distances measured in miles. I'm like, no, they weren't doing that. Oh, okay, kilometers. No, they weren't doing that either. And that got me annoyed enough to start researching. And when I started finding things, that led to projects like me building measuring sticks, and using those old measurements. And I thought, this is a decent way to share information. And I went through this with, money mentioned in the stories. Okay, fine. So, as I retold these folk tales, a lot of times I would include pictures. Part of that was to create visual interest, because I remember from my PowerPoints, if there were pictures on the slides, that had the students' interests. Well, also, I'm lazy. I don't like to learn a script. So, I would just speak for a little bit and then throw in a picture, and I'd do a voiceover and then speak some more. And that made it easier for me to do. But then I started to gain more confidence about it. And actually, during this current reign, because of a challenge from my king who has decided to step out and start doing bardic stuff, I've been forcing myself more and more to do video stuff without the pictures. But I'm going to include them in this video because I think that's going to help. Now, why do the videos and why create a YouTube channel? To record your SCA journey. You're gonna find your interests changing. You're gonna find your interests expanding. You're gonna become more confident about doing certain things. So it's documenting your progress and documenting your research, and you share what you've learned. You shouldn't hoard knowledge. Share it. And a YouTube channel is a place where your videos are going to be easily accessible to all. Why reinvent the wheel when you can find out how somebody else did it? Okay, so here's the how-to part. The first thing you're going to need is a topic, all right? And you really ought to do this with a script. Okay, if the topic is of interest, you're doing research and you're writing the script. Find images if you need them. Number the parts of the script and change the color of the font so you know which is you talking and when you're doing a voiceover. Again, why do I use pictures? Reason one, visual interest. Okay? It's really cool if you can find a period illustration of something. And I try to avoid using AI because that's the devil, evidently. So I just try to avoid using it. But you know what? A picture helps. And I also mentioned a talking head is kind of boring. And also I'm lazy, too lazy to actually learn scripts. But this is the key. These videos don't replace the storytelling. These are training wheels. Because now by having done videos on particular tales, I'm seeing similarities between them, and I now try to point these out in my videos. I am able to remember them off the top of my head, and so if I want to enter a bardic competition or simply tell a story, I remember the tale and remember all the pieces. So if a picture is going to be 002, like in the previous video that I did on Slavic astronomy, and I just labeled all the pictures stars, 001, 002, whatever. So if a picture is stars 002, the voiceover is stars 002A. So I get a title card. Actually, I use my "You are now entering the ozone" picture because my students called me, or called my class, the ozone, since I was Mr. O to them. Then the title of your video. Here's the first video piece, stars 001, along with the music I ended up using. I include royalty-free music, at least as an intro. Lower the volume on the music so you don't drown yourself out. When I'm moving pictures over to iMovie, what ends up happening is the pictures transfer automatically as 4 seconds long. But if your voiceover is longer, you stretch out the length of the picture to the length of the voiceover. Now everything's covered. Let's say later on in the video I want to add some other background music while I'm doing a voiceover. I open up my thumb drive that I've attached because there's like no memory in a MacBook or an iPad, and I find the piece that I want. And so the first level in iMovie, you end up having, maybe the visual, the video, or you might be having the picture. Second level is the voiceover. So you move down to a third level, adjusting the volume so it doesn't interfere with the voiceover. And remember to use royalty-free music if you don't want the sound muted by the YouTube overlords. So maybe in addition to the voiceover and the picture and the music, you want to have a sound effect. There's a fourth level that you can move an audio piece to. Again, careful of the volume. The last piece goes into place. I warn my viewers that there are more videos coming. Also, this is where I start begging for subscriptions. Now that you've got all the pieces in place, in iMovie, it's time for other people to see what you did. Hit the share button. That's on the top level towards the right side. You'll see a variety of choices, such as sharing directly to YouTube. I prefer to share file because I want to put it on my thumb drive. From there, I'm going to upload this to my Godzilla-sized external drive I call Goliath. I don't want my videos just up on YouTube, or on Facebook. I want to have copies for myself, and I'm storing all the video fragments that you were using along with your pictures. That's going to eat a lot of memory. So I end up deleting the video fragments. I keep the pictures. The pictures are being kept because they're always useful for future videos or just as points of reference. That's a whole lot of reclaimed memory there. The video fragments have been deleted. Now you upload to the YouTube channel you've hopefully created. No, I wasn't very creative about the name of my channel. There were suggestions made like History Guy, and some of these suggestions, they sounded a little pretentious. And okay, there's also my laziness. I didn't want to have to, change passwords and, the name of the channel. I just wanted it to remain, under my name. And there's another reason for this. I changed focus. There were different projects, like completely different projects that didn't belong under the same umbrella. I started with the very pretentious sounding Mission Odyssey, and I thought that it was going to end there. But then once I hit all the missions and, and Russian California, I went, oh, God, this is kind of cool. I found stuff on California Outlaws, so I came up with another imprint, Chasing Banditos, and then there was the California Ghost Towns, and then there was stuff that didn't quite fit into these particular categories that I called California's Living History. And then there's the war in Ukraine that got started, so I had another imprint for that. And now I've got my Tales of the Borderlands. And the advantage of having this kind of a generic name, I can switch from one project to another, one category of project to another, and if I start to get stale in one area, I just shift gears. Or sometimes the muse will just show up and say, no, you're working on this stuff and it's going to be a long time and I wouldn't count on getting any sleep. The uploading of a video is a fairly painless process. You just go to the right hand corner and click on create, and then you click upload. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. This way you have your research on file, the fruits of your labor is there on YouTube. You got easy access to it. Other people have easy access to it. So what are you going to do? Are you going to do a series of videos on medieval cooking? Have some friends in on the project? How to put on a feast? Will you record music performances for events, or just several of you got together to just film it? Or are you going to tell stories? I'm going to take a page from the 3 people that took my class yesterday, plus from some of my friends who are more learned in these matters than I. Hit the like button and subscribe. Please comment. I'm serious about the last one, except for the first video I did that a fellow teacher over at Roosevelt taught me how to do it because I assigned this to my students to do. I'm largely self-taught. I'm just clicking buttons and going, oh, that didn't work so good. It's just me, a cell phone, a tripod, and I like to research stuff. So, and share it, because I'm a teacher. I'm still a teacher, even though I've been out of the classroom for 6.5 years. I believe knowledge should be free. So if you know more about the topic, I'm open to advice. Okay, until the next time. Do pobачення.